Hello everyone. The course name is Banking Regulation and Operations. The unit is Principles of Bank Lending, and the topic that I'll be covering through this presentation is on NPA or non-performing assets. So what is an NPA? An asset including a leased asset becomes non-performing when it ceases to generate income for the bank. A non-performing asset or NPA was defined as a credit facility in respect of which the interest or and installment of principal has remained past due for a specified period of time. So the specified period of time was reduced in a phased manner as under. So see, NPA is some or non-performing asset is an asset which has remained non-performing for a period of time. So this period of time was no if, on March 31st, 1993. Till that it was 4 quarters, and from that day to March 31st, 1994, the period was considered to be 3 quarters, and from 1995 onwards it was reduced to 2 quarters. Now, with a view to moving towards international best practices and to ensure greater transparency, it has been decided to adopt the 90 days overdue norm for the identification of NPAs from the year ending March 31st, 2004. So you might be able to see this is something which I've taken from the RBI website only. So from 1995 onwards, the period for which the assets could be classified into NPA was reduced to 2 quarters. But to keep up with the international practices, now again the 90 days overdue policy has been reinstalled from with effect from March 31st, 2004. So any assets which remains non-performing for a period of 90 days or 3 months will be considered as an NPA in India with effect from March 31st, 2004. Accordingly, with effect from March 31st, 2004, an NPA shall be a loan or an advance bearer. So in which situations no assets can be classified into an NPA category is mentioned as below. Interest and or installment of principal remain overdue for a period of more than 90 days in respect of a term loan, or the account remains out of order for a period of more than 90 days in respect of an overdraft or a cash credit facility, or the bills remain overdue for a period of more than 90 days in the case of bills purchased and bills discounted. Also, NPA will be considered if the interest and or installment of principal remains overdue for 2 harvest seasons, but for a period of not exceeding 2 half years in the case of an advance granted for agricultural purposes. So you can see it is only for agricultural products that this 90 days of NPA period is not applicable. So here either 2 harvest seasons is considered or 2 half years is considered. And last one, any amount to be received remains overdue for a period of more than 90 days in respect of any other accounts. So under all these circumstances, the respective account will be considered to be a non-performing asset. Coming to the income recognition policy of an NPA. So the policy of income recognition has to be objective and based on the record of recovery. Internationally, income from NPA is not recognized on accrual basis, but is booked as income only when it is actually received. So it is a very important concept that for NPA, any income coming in cannot be calculated as income on if it is on accrual basis. So only when the income is actually received, it can be considered to be an income for setting of the NPA. Therefore, the banks should not charge and take into account the income account interest on any NPA. However, interest on advances against term deposits such as NSCs, IVPs, KVPs, and life policies may be taken to income account on the due date provided adequate margin is available in the accounts. This is because in all these kind of things like in life policies or no NSCs, that is national saving certificates or something like this, the interest on advances, although it is something which comes as an accrual basis, but still there is a guarantee that the payment will be received. Therefore, in these cases, the accrual basis can be considered and you don't have to actually receive the income to be considered against setting of the NPA. Next one is fees and commissions earned by the banks as a result of renegotiations or rescheduling of outstanding debts. So that should also be recognized on an accrual basis over the period of time covered by the renegotiated or rescheduled extension of credit. And again, the reason is same because there is a guarantee for the payment. Therefore, such payments can be considered on accrual basis and you don't have to wait for the actual payment to come in. And last one, if the government guaranteed advances become NPA, the interest on such advances should not be taken to income account unless the interest has been realized. For example, no agriculture or farmer loans that are being written off by the government. So it is like the government has to pay at some point of time, right? So such NPAs cannot be written off unless no the government actually pays it. So that cannot be considered in accrual no basis income. Coming to the next topic, which is on reporting of NPAs. So the banks are required to furnish a report on NPAs as on 31st March each year after the completion of the audit. So once the audit is completed, okay, a report on NPA has to be presented till the 31st March of that particular year once the audit is completed. And every bank in India has to do it. The NPAs would relate to the bank's global portfolio, including the advances at the foreign branches. So when I say the NPA of a particular bank, it will not be restricted to the branches in India alone, but even if there are NPAs in its foreign branch, even that needs to be reported under the bank's NPA statement. While reporting the NPA figures to RBI, the amount held in the interest suspense account should be shown as a deduction from the gross NPAs as well as gross advances while arriving at the net NPAs. So the banks which do not maintain interest suspense account for parking interest due on non-performing advance accounts may furnish the amount of interest receivable on NPAs as a footnote to the report. Also, whenever NPAs are reported to RBI, the amount of technical write-off, if any, should be reduced from the outstanding gross advances and gross NPAs to eliminate any distortion in the quantum of NPAs being reported. So these are the things that the bank has to take care of when they are reporting their NPAs after the completion of audit. Now, there are different categorization of assets, okay, and these categorization only helps the banks to determine which assets are going to be NPS in future. So the first there is something called standard asset, obviously, which is not overdue for a period. So it is obviously classified as a standard asset. There is something called substandard assets. So NPA for a period less than or equal to 18 months, right? So suppose if I am a customer, I've taken a loan from a bank. Okay, I am not paying installment for a month or two. In that case, I cannot be considered to be a substandard. My loan cannot be considered to be a substandard asset for the bank. It might remain to be a standard asset still, right? But if an NPA for a period of less than or equal to 18 months is there, that is considered to be a substandard asset. Doubtful asset, NPA for a period exceeding 18 months. So more than 18 months, it becomes a doubtful asset. And loss asset is one in which the loss has been identified by the bank or internal or external auditors or the RBI inspection, but the amount has not been written off wholly. It is like the bank is very sure that it is not going to get back that particular loan or advance or the asset which is given out, but again it is not written off in the books of accounts. For that reason it will be considered as a loss asset. So what are the provisioning norms for any of these categories of assets? Okay, so in asset classification, there is a provision which is allowed in the bank's financial documents. For for standard assets, the provisioning allowed is 0.25% on the standard assets. For a substandard asset, the provisioning allowed is 10% on total outstanding. If it's a doubtful asset, there is again three categories, because for a doubtful asset is something which remains non-performing for a period of more than 18 months. So if it is up to 1 year, then the provisioning requirement is 20%. If it's 1 to 3 years, the provisioning requirement is 30%. And if it is more than 3 years, then it is the provision requirement is 50% of that particular asset. Last one is loss asset. So for loss asset, there is no provision or percentage of provision which is exactly available. For any loss asset, the entire asset has to be written off. Now coming to the something called a stressed asset. So what is a stressed asset? Lenders shall recognize incipient stress in loan accounts immediately on default by classifying such assets as special mention accounts as per the following categories. Okay, so there is something called SMAs or special mention account, which is no, also available under the category of stressed asset. So SMA subcategories for no banking purpose is divided into two: SMA 0, SMA 1, and SMA 2. So the basis of classification is that the principal or interest payment or any other amount wholly or partly overdue remains for a specific period. For SMA 0, the period will be between 1 to 30 days. For SMA 1, the period will be between 31 to 60 days. And SMA 2, the period will be between 61 to 90 days, right? For example, if I am taking a loan, okay, and I am not repaying back, suppose I'm missing one of my installments of principal and interest, okay, for a period of 1 month, okay, in that case my loan will be classified as SMA 0. For the second one, if it is like if I'm defaulting for say 2 months, then it can be classified into SMA 1 category. And if I'm defaulting for say 3 months or something like that, then it is classified into SMA 2 category. Coming to the impact of NPAs. So what will be the impact of NPAs in banks? NPAs is something which is in news nowadays, and most of the Indian public sector banks or even private sector banks are no facing the no drawbacks of this huge NPA issue, right? So what are the impact for NPA in any bank? First, obviously, is profitability. So when there is no huge amount of NPA for any bank, it obviously affects the profitability of the bank. And even if the bank is generating enough revenue, at some point of time, the NPA will no create a disadvantage by reducing the profitability. Second one is credit contraction. Obviously, when your debt is too much or your non-performing assets are too much, even if you are generating enough revenue as a bank, still your no lending capacity is reduced, because there is a lot more to be written off against the NPAs. So your the credit of the bank contracts even if they are generating enough revenue, if there is a huge NPA. Coming to the capital adequacy. So there is something called a capital adequacy ratio, and a lot of norms regarding minimum capital adequacy ratio that needs to be maintained by each banks. So the capital adequacy of the bank is also impacted very badly when there is a growing NPA for the bank. The next impact is on the liability management. So the bank's asset liabilities, always there should be a proper write-off between the assets and liabilities of the bank. When there is huge amount of NPA, obviously the liabilities are more, and the assets that the bank is having will not be enough to meet up those liabilities, right? So liability mismanagement happens, and therefore that is the importance of the ALM guidelines. Shareholders confidence. Obviously, when a bank is having too much of NPA and is facing a lot of issue because of that, the shareholders also start reducing their confidence on that particular bank's performance, and therefore the share prices also get affected at some point of time. And at last, the public confidence. So the public, when when the bank is fighting with the issues of NPA, and obviously at some point of time the RBI also declares that either the bank has to be merged with some larger banks or something like that. That kind of situation happens when the shareholders lose the confidence, the public loses the confidence in the bank, and they are not ready to make the investments, and those kind of things happen. So these are the various impact of NPA on a bank. So in short, even if the bank is having very good revenue, very good customer base, but if it is not able to manage the NPAs properly, at some point of time, it is going to lose no, all its credit worthiness, its profitability, its capital adequacy, its no confidence of its shareholders and public in large. So this is the importance of NPA. NPA is very important topic, and I just hope this gives a good idea about the topic or the concept of NPA. What are the impact of NPA? How the assets are classified into NPA, the provisions available, and all those things. Thank you so much for watching.